The afternoon sun bled through the heavy velvet drapes of the master bedroom, painting long amber rectangles across the oriental rug. This was the third hour of my new existence as a member of the Harrington household. The previous two had been consumed by the elaborate, exhausting rituals of a high society wedding. Alexander was still downstairs in the grand ballroom, playing the gracious host to a sea of tuxedos and gowns. I had been deposited here, on the edge of the vast four-poster bed, its dark mahogany carved with grim-faced eagles. Unease was a cold stone in my stomach. The reason was simple and utterly insane. Alexander Harrington was a man. I was also a man. What sane person entered into a marriage with another man? The problem, of course, was that Alexander Harrington was not a sane person. Not in the conventional sense. This world, I had come to understand, was the setting of a novel I had once read, a story of dramatic reversal and brutal comeuppance. The protagonist, Alexander, had been burdened with immense expectation long before his birth. His arrival into the world was marked by a violent summer storm that cleaved the sky with unnatural forks of green lightning, a sign many took as divine favor. He was, by all early accounts, a child of destiny. Then came the aptitude tests at the prestigious Blackwood Academy. Everything changed. The tests revealed no trace of the psionic resonance that allowed one to manipulate the ambient energy, the current. He was declared a null, incapable of wielding power, a mundane in a world that worshipped the extraordinary. His fiancée, my sister Serafina, had just been accepted as the protégé of the director of the powerful Orion Institute. One was a rising star with limitless potential. The other was considered a broken vessel, unable to hold even a drop of power. No one thought them a match. Out of deference to the long-standing alliance between our families, the Westwoods couldn't immediately sever the engagement. So, the arrangement hung in limbo until the day I woke up in this world. According to the original plot, Serafina, accompanied by her senior colleague from the Institute, would have gone to formally break the engagement. That colleague, Marcus, intended to lend his authority to ensure a clean, decisive end. The problem was that Orion operatives were notoriously arrogant. Serafina arriving with Marcus in tow would look less like a diplomatic dissolution and more like she was discarding old trash for a shiny new prospect. Alexander, young and prideful, would have found such a public humiliation unbearable. He would have torn up the contract and uttered the famous line, "Don't underestimate the man on his way up." He'd have been laughed out of the room. What they didn't know was that Alexander was not a null. He was a prime resonant, a once-in-a-generation talent whose abilities were latent, dormant until his coming of age. After his 21st birthday, his power would awaken, and he would become the most formidable psychic the world had ever known. The Westwood family's downfall would begin there. Serafina would encounter a catastrophic accident on a deep space survey mission, her potential permanently crippled. Without her as a shield, our family's influence would evaporate. Once Alexander ascended, legions would flock to curry his favor. The Westwoods would face systematic exclusion and sabotage from every corporation and institute. My parents would perish under suspicious circumstances. Serafina, her spirit broken, would never glimpse the heights she was meant to reach. The original version of me, Sebastian Westwood, was a sickly footnote. He survived only because Serafina, through sheer force of will, channeled fragments of her own vitality to sustain him. Once her power was shattered, Sebastian naturally faded away. To give my new family a fighting chance, after successfully predicting a corporate sabotage on one of our orbital platforms, I chose a calm evening. I laid out everything I knew. My parents and Serafina listened in stunned silence. My father finally spoke, his voice heavy. "So, Alexander is destined for greatness after all?" I confirmed it, my expression troubled. The protagonist of such a story was always surrounded by admirers. If Serafina went through with the public rejection, our families would become enemies. If she went through with the marriage, Alexander's future entanglements would make fidelity a fantasy. The Westwoods had been kind to me, Serafina had driven herself to exhaustion to keep me alive. I wanted her to find real happiness. I suggested that if she had no feelings for Alexander, we should wait until his power manifested, then dissolve the contract cleanly. We could offer generous reparations. The Harringtons were ruthless, but they valued business. My father sighed. This contract was your great-grandfather's doing. But it's clear now, whether Alexander has power or not, this arrangement does Serafina a disservice. Serafina was quiet for a long time before speaking softly. We won't break it. I'll go through with it. Then fate intervened. Old Man Harrington, the patriarch, was preparing for a final high-stakes bioenhancement procedure. Success would extend his life and influence for decades. Failure would mean his end. Before entering the chamber, he wanted to see his grandson married, settled. Everyone understood he was trying to secure Alexander's future. A Harrington-Westwood alliance would ensure his grandson's comfort, even as a mundane. The wedding date was moved up. On the morning of the ceremony, Serafina vanished, leaving only a note. Alexander's procession waited at our gates for an hour. As the appointed time slipped past with no bride, my parents, desperate, pulled him into the library. They confessed everything. Knowing Alexander's future, they had treated him with utmost caution, terrified of making an enemy. Alexander listened, a strange, contemplative smile touching his lips. "Mr. Westwood," he finally said, "our union is the talk of the city. If word gets out that Serafina has fled, the embarrassment for your family would be significant." My parents' faces were tense. "Alexander, the Westwoods have wronged you." Alexander offered a gentle, understanding smile. "The pressure from my grandfather was unfair. Her reluctance is perfectly natural. But given the circumstances," his gaze swept the room, finally landing on me. "The Westwood estate needs to provide a partner today. The contract was between our family's heirs. Since Serafina is unavailable, perhaps Sebastian could fulfill the obligation." My family stared, shocked. Partnerships between men in our circles, while not the norm, were not unheard of. Marrying Alexander wasn't the scandal. It was the sheer audacity. Alexander looked at me, sighing as if burdened. "I must apologize. This is my failing. Serafina marrying me would have been a sacrifice. And my grandfather, in his twilight, shouldn't have to worry so." Alexander possessed a compelling, polished charm. Combined with his tragic narrative, he effortlessly inspired pity. My parents immediately took his hands, murmuring apologies for our family's failure. His expression grew solemn, and when he turned to me, his smile seemed strained, fragile. He approached and took my hand. "Today, I only wish to grant my grandfather peace. Sebastian, would you help me?" I was about to refuse when I felt it. The moment his skin touched mine, the dormant system within me, the vitality interface, jolted awake. When I first arrived in this body, I'd been hanging on by a thread. The original Sebastian survived on borrowed energy from Serafina. I survived by passively absorbing traces of her latent potential, her fortune. The system had been comatose, barely siphoning enough to keep my body from total failure. Staying near Serafina let my meter creep upward. Her disappearance caused it to begin a slow, terrifying decline. Until Alexander touched me. Alexander was what? The genius of our age.
Fortuna's favorite son.
His potential was so vast it jump-started my entire system. Before I left the house, the system's voice, smooth and faintly amused, echoed in my mind. "You don't want to remain a burden forever, do you?" Then the damn thing made my body nod in agreement. My family, seeing my ascent, practically bundled me into the limousine with relieved joy. Alexander explained it was all a performance, a temporary arrangement for appearances. He told me not to be afraid. I wasn't afraid of him. The person who should be afraid was Alexander. I stared, numb, at the task the system displayed. Primary objective: utilize the prime resonant Alexander Harrington, to repair host's neural pathways. Upon completion, host may choose to stay or depart. I considered it. Repaired pathways meant I could harness the current. Serafina wouldn't have to carry me. I could protect the Westwoods. Alexander's fortune was a resource. Why not use it? I accepted. I also asked the penalty for refusal. Host vitality will deplete at a rate of 10% per day until termination. I looked at my 11% vitality meter and said nothing. Task 1. Establish a friendship with the prime resonant. Engage in a deep, passionate kiss. I informed the system that friends, real friends, did not engage in passionate kissing. That was not friendship. That was something else entirely. The system considered my feedback. It lowered the requirement. Task 1. Establish a friendship with the prime resonant. Hold his hand. I suspected the system was manipulative. Propose something outrageous, then retreat to a merely awkward request, increasing the likelihood of compliance. I agreed. The system promised a 5% repair to my neural pathways. Plus, in the original story, Alexander had a procession of romantic interests. Any woman who showed interest was welcomed. That kind of protagonist was irrefutably heterosexual. His insistence on this marriage was about saving face, or perhaps a subtle revenge for Serafina's rejection. It certainly wasn't a sudden shift in preference. Friendship was the only possible outcome. I told myself it was fine. Brothers could hold hands. It was normal. I assumed it would be simple. But throughout the entire ceremony, a ribbon of dark silk had lain between our palms. The man hadn't touched me once. Eager to be done with it, after the vows, I reached from beneath my ceremonial veil and found his hand. His palm was rough, the joints of his fingers calloused from hours spent in physical training, striving for excellence in a world that denied him its true prize. Alexander jerked his hand back as if shocked. "What is it?" he asked quietly. "I can't see. Could you guide me?" He was silent for a few heartbeats. Then his hand returned, enveloping mine, leading me through the cathedral and into the waiting car. I sat on the bed now, perplexed. Why hadn't the task completed? The system promptly appeared to chastise me. While we had walked hand in hand, it stated we were not yet friends. Read the objective parameters, host. I felt a flash of irritation. Alexander was terribly inconsiderate. I'd gone through this whole charade for him. Annoyed, I tossed the veil aside and went to the sideboard, pouring a glass of the rich, amber bourbon meant for a toast. Now, Alexander was downstairs with the guests. As I fidgeted, a faint scrape came from the window. A shadow slipped inside, resolving into a man who rushed forward and grabbed my wrist. "Serafina, don't be afraid. I know you didn't want this. I'm getting you out of here." It was Marcus, Serafina's senior colleague, now a lead agent at Orion. In the original plot, his aggressive posturing had provoked Alexander's famous defiance. Without Marcus stirring the pot, Serafina and Alexander might have parted civilly. Later, consumed by jealousy of Alexander's rise, Marcus would turn corrupt, committing terrible acts. One of them was orchestrating the accident that crippled Serafina's potential. I sat motionless under the discarded veil. Marcus hesitated. "Serafina?" He knelt, gripping my shoulders. "Serafina, nothing happened with the new recruit. I swear. I was just mentoring her. She's the one who attached herself to me. You can't throw your life away on a null like Harrington. What can he give you? Can he take you to the Celestial Archives? All he has is his family's money." A sharp crack echoed in the room. My palm connected with his cheek. "Stop your pathetic fantasies, Marcus. Your indiscretions are your own. Don't drag me into them." Marcus was stunned. Then he registered that my voice was not Serafina's. If he truly loved her, he would have resolved this before the ceremony, not skulked into the marital suite afterward. If we were seen, only Serafina's reputation would suffer. In the original story, unable to match her, He hadn't wished for her success but for her ruin. Anger, fueled by the bourbon, surged. I slapped him again. Alexander may lack measurable resonance, but he has integrity. What good is your power when your character is rotten? I drew my hand back for a third strike. Marcus caught my wrist. You're not her. He tore the veil from my head. Our eyes met. He blinked. Sebastian, a feeble null like you dares to strike me? Rage ignited in his eyes. Energy, visible as a pale blue shimmer, began to coalesce around his palm. He meant to kill me. To men like him, mundanes were insects. A faint thud sounded, and Marcus crumpled to the floor. Alexander stood behind him, a heavy marble bookend in his hand. 1, 2, 3. Alexander swam in my vision. Alexander, why are there 3 of you? He knelt, his scent of sandalwood and night air cutting through the alcohol haze. You've been drinking. I nodded. My previous self could hold his liquor. Sebastian's body had no such tolerance. A tactical error. The 3 blurred figures of Alexander seemed to sway. I reached out to steady myself against one, but my hand was caught midair. What are you trying to do? My thoughts moved through syrup. I asked him, Alexander, why won't you be my friend? I heard a soft chuckle. When did I say you weren't? He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. I looked up sharply. My vitality meter leaped forward. 21%. Neural pathway repair. 5%. Task 1 was marked complete. Simultaneously, the system issued the second task. Task 2. Friends share all things. Share the ceremonial toast with Alexander. Drink together until the world softens. I told the system that where I came from, friends didn't drink from linked glasses. The system called me provincial. It was tradition here. It also explained that fortune couldn't be siphoned freely. A connection had to be established. The deeper the bond, the easier the transfer. My vitality would rise more steadily. Serafina was my sister, a deep biological and emotional link. Alexander was different. Our connection was shallow. Physical contact was the only conduit. But if we deepened our tie, I could eventually draw from him just by proximity, as I had with Serafina. Host, I am optimizing for your survival. It insisted. Your meter has risen, but without a stable connection, it will decay again. Alexander is your best option. A little effort now for a lifetime of security. Alexander waved a hand before my eyes. I realized I was still holding his. He gestured to the unconscious Marcus. I should deal with our guest. If you're tired, rest. All right? I shook my head. I'll wait for you. While Alexander was gone, I agonized. To complete the task, we had to share the bourbon from those 2 crystal glasses. Obviously, friends didn't drink a ceremonial toast. How could I possibly ask? Hey, Alexander, want to do the couple's toast with me? Alexander was a confirmed heterosexual. The door opened. Alexander returned, his steps slightly unsteady, a flush high on his cheeks. A small procession of household staff followed. He leaned into me, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered that the situation was handled and these people were just here for tradition. The staff chuckled by the door. So eager, young master, but protocol must be observed. Relieved, I let them guide us through the motions. When we drank, our faces were a hand's breadth apart. I heard him murmur my name, Sebastian. I didn't know why. His exhale warmed my skin, making it difficult to meet his gaze. We drained the glasses. The staff offered cheerful, traditional well-wishes before filing out. My meter climbed another notch. The task was half done. The toast was complete, but the shared inebriation remained. Then the third task appeared. Task 3. The night is serene. Perhaps Alexander could hold you. Before I could protest, the system preempted me. Friends offer comfort. Is that not normal? I sneered. What friends ask for a hug on their wedding night? But the task was mandatory. The system explained that once my vitality surpassed 60%, the decay would stop. I'd be temporarily safe. I was at 41% with 15% neural repair. Finishing tasks 2 and 3 would stabilize me. Alexander's flushed face suggested he'd drunk plenty downstairs. He was still ostensibly a mundane like me. The system, sensing my calculation, offered a suggestion. If Alexander is inebriated, he will be more amenable. My own head was buzzing. The Harrington bourbon was potent. The idea seemed logical. I sat at the small table and refilled the glasses. I pushed one toward Alexander, meeting his eyes. We're both in unusual circumstances. Now that we're friends, shouldn't we share a proper drink? His gaze was deep, unreadable. Tonight might not be the best time. He sat beside me, took the glass from my hand, and also picked up the other. He drank them both. You're not well. You should rest. His eyes held a strange intensity. I thought there might still be a chance. I took the glasses back and filled them again. Leaning my head on my hand, I smiled. What's appropriate or not? It's just a drink. You drank with them downstairs. Can't you drink with me? He didn't answer, but his hand closed around the glass. Several rounds later, I'd consumed a significant amount. The soft chime in my mind signaled the completion of the shared inebriation objective. I finally let the glass go. Alexander helped me to the bed. Sleep here tonight. I'll take the sofa. Call if you need anything. My mind was foggy, fixated on the final objective. Hearing he would leave, I caught his hand. The bed is large enough. He stiffened. Of course. Alexander, the future ladies' man, would be averse to this. But my survival was at stake. Your grandfather wanted this marriage to look real. The performance should be convincing. He relented, tucking the duvet around me before lying down stiffly beside me. I fought exhaustion, waiting until his breathing became slow and even. Sebastian, I whispered. No response. Heart pounding, I slowly slid from my cocoon and carefully moved until I was nestled against his side, his arm unconsciously coming to rest over me. The task completed, but perhaps a bit too thoroughly. Morning brought a shock. I remembered completing the task and carefully retreating to my side. But the system, due to an optimization, had not delivered the next task or reward until now. I woke expecting to see a healthy meter above 60%, planning my return to the Westwood estate. Instead, I stared at a vitality bar that had stretched impossibly long, with a tiny sliver of green at the beginning. 1%. Neural pathway repair, 50%. Host performed exceptionally. Reward, expanded vitality capacity. As current vitality remains constant, the percentage displayed decreases. Congratulations. This empty meter was a taunt. I should have been furious with the system, but a more immediate crisis demanded attention. I distinctly remembered separating from Alexander after the task. Yet I woke up firmly wrapped in his embrace. He was physically powerful, his frame solid and warm. I tried to push away, but his arm tightened. It's early. Sleep a little longer. His murmur was sleep-roughened, and he pressed a soft kiss to my temple. My face heated. He felt my tension and chuckled softly, his fingers tilting my chin up before his lips found mine. I froze. Was this part of the friendship performance? A soft sound escaped me, and Alexander jolted awake. He stared at me in his arms, confusion giving way to dismay. He released me and sat up swiftly. Apologies. I thought. He struggled for words. I'm not used to sharing a bed. Sebastian, please don't think anything of it. He looked genuinely remorseful. I relaxed. Of course. Alexander was straight. The practice kiss was just protagonist instinct. As for the target, a sleepy mistake. After I dressed, Alexander had Marcus brought up from the secure basement holding room. Alexander's demeanor was awkward. I felt no such awkwardness. It was just a kiss. Where is my sister? I demanded of Marcus. After stripping away his narcissistic fantasy that Serafina had left out of jealousy, only one conclusion remained. She had disappeared, likely heading for the Celestial Archives alone. The archives were the most enigmatic and authoritative place on the continent. In the original story, even the most powerful psychics deferred to them. Alexander, of course, would eventually defy them. Later, they would issue a termination order for him. The story had been left unfinished by its original author. My system chose that moment to issue Task 4. Task 4: Journey to the Celestial Archives with Alexander. I was relieved. Kissing and hugging tasks were manageable, but constantly clinging to him was unsustainable. However, the archives were a late-game location. Alexander's power wasn't due to awaken for months. I had no reason to ask him to go. If he refused, my dwindling meter would kill me before then. The system offered an alternative. Or simply kiss Alexander. You will, after all, find his eyes quite compelling. Did the morning's kiss not count? I instinctively glanced at him. He did have remarkably expressive eyes. He noticed my look. Worried about Serafina? I quickly looked away, focusing my ire on Marcus. Why would she go to the archives? Did she say anything before she left? Marcus paused. I don't know, wait. The senior field agent on our team was critically injured. The medics said her neural damage was irreversible. Perhaps Serafina went to the archives seeking a treatment. He seemed to believe this, his tone turning scornful. She's arrogant. The archives admit maybe a dozen petitioners a year. Does she think being the youngest registered grade 5 psychic grants her an audience? He muttered under his breath, I don't see what's so special about that woman. All the junior agents orbit her, bringing her upgrades tech. They don't even show that much devotion to their partners. Marcus was lying. In the original story, Serafina and the senior agent, Agent Sylvia Vance, were not close. It was Agent Vance who later showed Serafina kindness after her fall. The plot was deviating. Sebastian, how would you like this handled? Alexander was suddenly behind me. Marcus snarled. Do you know who I am? 2 nulls, hiding behind your family names. If not for that, you'd be nothing. The arrogance was astounding. A trained psychic, knocked out by a mundane with a bookend. I told him we would be contacting the director of Orion personally to retrieve his wayward agent. Marcus paled. The director was notoriously strict. He began to bluster, claiming he'd merely entered the wrong room, that I was a man. What could he possibly have intended? I coldly agreed. Then, I let my eyes well up and turned into Alexander's chest. Does having no resonance mean my life has no value? If you hadn't come when you did, I was too frightened. Alexander's arm came around me, his voice cool as he looked toward the doorway. Agent Marcus's conduct is unacceptable. Grandfather, I rely on your judgment. Old Mr. Harrington stood there, having sensed the disturbance. His word carried immense weight. By that evening, a strongly worded communique was on its way to Orion. Marcus's career was effectively over. Later, in our rooms, Alexander asked if I was still worried. I admitted I was, but felt helpless, unable to even locate the archives. Do you wish to harness the current? He asked quietly. I told him yes. I spoke of Serafina, the pressure she endured, how part of her drive was to protect me. I added hastily that while she had left, I could see he had no real attachment to her, so perhaps it was for the best. Alexander's smile was genuine. It is for the best. Then his eyes met mine. There might be a way for you to develop resonance. My interest was immediate. He seemed hesitant. I might worry you. I pressed him. Any chance is a miracle. How could I be upset? He produced a data slate from a locked drawer. Before the wedding, my grandfather found this in the family vault. It details a method for those with damaged potential to cultivate a connection. I took it eagerly. I won't be angry.
I'm grateful.
I opened the file. My face grew warm. A resonance synchronization protocol? My system was having me take baby steps, and Alexander's grandfather was suggesting a Formula One track. But I pointed out the text specified one participant needed to be an extremely powerful psychic. We were both. Alexander gave a secretive smile. He took my hand and placed it flat against his abdomen, just below his ribs. I was about to protest the intimacy when a wave of pure, staggering power vibrated through my palm, making my bones hum. It was prime energy. I stared at him. He placed a finger lightly over my lips. "You're the only one who knows. Our secret." "Yes?" I nodded, dazed. According to the plot, his awakening was months away. Now, not only was he awake, but his strength felt profound. He saw my confusion. A fortunate encounter. "The point is, Sebastian, if you wish to walk this path, I can help." My instincts tingled with, but the offer was too good. If this method worked, a prime resonant was the ideal partner. "But wouldn't it harm you?" He shook his head. After years as a null, suddenly exhibiting power would draw dangerous attention. "Until I'm ready, I need to suppress this energy. You agreeing would actually assist me." He was sincere, his gaze earnest. I was almost convinced, but I shook my head firmly. It sounds mutually beneficial. But Alexander was destined for a life surrounded by brilliant, powerful people. If we forged such an intimate link only to part later, the thought was untenable. I told him the method carried risks he shouldn't bear. Once his power was public, no one could threaten him. This should be done with someone you love. The Westwoods have wronged you enough. Alexander's expression darkened. He didn't argue, but that night he moved his things to the study. Task 4 loomed. I'd planned to sneak a kiss while he slept, but a prime resonant would detect any approach. The next day, a chastened Orion director collected Marcus. The old man shot Alexander along, considering look before leaving. Days passed without an opportunity. Alexander was engrossed in family business. The stalemate lasted until Old Man Harrington entered his enhancement chamber. On the 5th day after the wedding, he began the procedure. According to our original agreement, this was my cue to leave. After the family saw the patriarch off, Alexander departed on urgent business before I could speak. Even I could tell he was truly angry, though I didn't understand why. Could he be upset I refused the synchronization? That made no sense for a straight man. The system sighed, calling me hopelessly dense. My priority was returning home to strategize about Serafina. I left a note in Alexander's study explaining my departure. That evening, he was back in our room, my note in his hand. "Sebastian, what is this? Are you leaving?" His voice was raw. He looked terrible, pale, and strained. I urged him to sit. He remained standing. I stumbled through an explanation about needing to inform my parents. "Serafina has been found," he interrupted. Before I could ask, a trickle of blood escaped the corner of his mouth. I rushed forward. "What happened?" I reached for him and he flinched. My mind went blank. I started unbuttoning his shirt. He resisted weakly, too drained to stop me. Beneath, his torso was a mess of freshly bandaged wounds, blood seeping through. "How?" I began. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. "Sit down. Your wounds are reopening." He looked startled by my sharp tone but obeyed. I began carefully removing the soiled bandages. The damage was severe. I worked in silence, applying medgel from the sweets kit. Serafina went to the archives. "She's injured. Her situation is delicate. I've secured her outside the city. And you? You nearly got yourself killed." His smile was weak. "What else could I do? I couldn't help you with your resonance. I had to find your sister. I lost half my life force, returned to my study, and saw your note. If I'd been any later, you would have been gone." My hands stilled. "Alexander, do you have feelings for me?" His playful demeanor vanished. "Yes, I do." He saw my silence and rushed on. "Serafina has given her blessing. Your parents agreed to the match long ago. Is it so wrong for me to care for you?" His wounds had been treated, but they were serious. Looking into his eyes, I recalled the system's words about his compelling gaze. I sighed softly. When someone cares for another, they usually hide their wounds, not parade them. He had the grace to look abashed. I thought my efforts might earn me a kiss. I gave him a flat look. I assumed you'd had your fill this morning. A prime resonant would never be that disoriented upon waking. Unfazed, he leaned closer. One can't live on yesterday's meals alone. Tired of his chatter, I cupped his face and kissed him. Good news. My neural pathways were fully repaired. Bad news. Alexander had exaggerated his condition. He had energy to spare. Task for complete. Synergy bonus applied. Neural repair 100%. Vitality capacity increased. Current vitality 1%. Is my vitality permanently stuck at 1%? The system stammered about ongoing optimization and new objectives. Task 5. Engage in resonance synchronization with Alexander. Did last night accomplish nothing? The system was evasive. Practice makes perfect, host. Alexander woke, his hand instinctively finding my wrist. It worked. Grandfather's method is sound. He pulled me close. Rest a while longer. Then I'll take you to Serafina. I shifted. What is it? I gritted my teeth. It's early. Perhaps we should practice again? When Alexander took me to see my sister, he radiated no power, appearing utterly mundane. I, with my 1% meter, looked frail. Before we could leave, a household assistant reported that emissaries from the Celestial Archives had arrived. They were screening all prominent families for candidates with specific psychic signatures. Alexander explained quietly that the archivist, the leader of the Celestial Order, was dying. They were searching for a compatible host for a psychic transference. The archivist. I'd almost forgotten. In the original story, Alexander's fame came from his prime resonance, which was first publicly identified by the archivist's own seers. The archivist, his own mind crumbling, had ordered a hunt for the prime, intending to seize his body. Their screening was a ruse. Their arrogance would be their downfall. Alexander would be exposed, his grandfather would die defending him, and the Harringtons would fall. The archivists were already in the main hall. Every Harrington would be tested. If they found Alexander, my fear must have shown. He squeezed my hand. I'm indistinguishable from a mundane now. My ear grew warm. My repair was complete. Alexander's prime resonance was now deeply suppressed, sealed away by our practice. Only we knew. The testing was swift. I registered as a null. Alexander showed a faint, fractured resonance common in many mundanes. The archivist's aides barely glanced at us. A few Harringtons had decent potential, but nothing extraordinary. The aides conferred in hushed, frustrated tones. The seers were certain a prime was here. This was the last major family. One aide's face was grim. Perhaps the seer's mind is finally gone. They left empty-handed. Alexander was visibly pleased as we headed out of the city. I asked if he'd anticipated this. He admitted it freely. Thanks to you, Sebastian. I'd have been taken today otherwise. A nagging doubt lingered, but I soon saw Serafina. With her was Sylvia Vance, the senior agent she'd once described as rigid and unyielding. Sylvia was unconscious on a medbed. Serafina was tending to her with a focus I'd never seen. She turned, her eyes filling. Sebastian, you look pale. Then she saw the marks on my neck. Her fury was instantaneous, a blade of solid light flashing into her hand as she moved toward Alexander. Caught her. She struggled. Alexander Harrington, what have you done to my brother? Serafina, calm down. She turned on me. What has he done to you? Then she froze. Wait, you have resonance? I nodded. Alexander helped me. He's part of the family now. Please don't threaten him. Me threaten him? You should hear how he negotiated for you. She told the story. Serafina had been urgently recalled to Orion before the wedding. Returning, she was informed she'd been chosen for an honorary posting at the archives. Sylvia had reacted with cold scorn. Sylvia had been chosen once and returned, becoming an outcast. Serafina assumed it was bitterness. En route, Sylvia intercepted her, hiding her in a safe house and taking her place. "The archives are a gilded cage," Sylvia had said. "Those who enter cease to be themselves. There are no shortcuts, Serafina. Don't waste your gift." The safe house held others, gifted psychics who had vanished from their institutes. They revealed the archivists secretly controlled the major corporations and institutes, offering extended life to their leaders in exchange for a yearly tithe of talented psychics. The archivist consumed their potential to sustain himself. Survivors were left broken, adrift. Sylvia had gathered them. She had been a survivor, her current resonance a painful graft from her sister. She saved Serafina because she saw her sister's talent in her. Serafina, learning the truth, insisted on rescuing Sylvia. They were nearly captured. Alexander appeared. He saved them on one condition. Serafina formally dissolved their engagement and promised not to interfere with his relationship with me, in writing. Serafina clutched me. "Sebastian, I'm so sorry. When Sylvia recovers, I'm taking you home." Watching the tension between them, I spoke softly. "If you take me home, Alexander will come, too." Alexander's arm settled around my shoulders. "Looking forward to your guidance, sister." Serafina rolled her eyes. It took considerable coaxing before she grudgingly accepted the situation. With the archivist's agents searching, Serafina and Sylvia needed to hide. The institutes were compromised. Alexander assured me it was temporary. The archivist, failing to find a host, wouldn't last long. I asked how he could be so certain. He smiled. "A secret. But that synchronization protocol mentions that at its highest stage, partners achieve a deep psychic bond. No more secrets." His gaze was intense, his voice dropping to a murmur. "Now that you have the foundation, Sebastian, you must dedicate yourself to practice." I nodded, letting him lead. On Alexander's 21st birthday, his grandfather emerged from the chamber, successful, his life extended. It was a double celebration. News also broke. The archivist was dead. This time, Alexander's coming of age was marked by joy, not tragedy. He still kept his power hidden, citing the danger of a successor seeking the same prize. He also noted, with false concern, that I still looked frail despite our training, suggesting he simply needed to be more diligent. I had no rebuttal. After the archivist's death, the archive's hold on the institutes weakened. A decade of corporate warfare ensued. Just as the exhausted factions considered a truce, Serafina and Sylvia publicly released all the evidence of the conspiracy. The archives were disgraced.
Talenta agents de facte en massa.
The two women, both exceptionally powerful, founded a new enclave, the Ethereum, a sanctuary for those who left the corrupt systems. The old powers sought revenge. They targeted me, thinking the sickly-looking Westwood heir an easy mark. Alexander returned home to find the courtyard littered with bodies. He checked me for injuries, frantic. I was merely upset they destroyed a lantern we'd bought together at a street fair. Soon after, a series of unfortunate accidents befell the leadership of every major institute that had sent agents. Their replacements were mediocre but politically savvy individuals. The old powers would spend the next century in bureaucratic stagnation. Predators belonged in the muck. I looked at Alexander. "Do you find me monstrous?" He pulled me down into a kiss. I handled the cleanup. "We're accomplices, darling." When we finally achieved the deepest stage of the synchronization protocol, within the shared space of our minds, I accessed a memory far older than my own. I saw myself from before. I had written a story. The protagonist's name was Alexander. 2/3 through, he was trapped, his future bleak. I was diagnosed with an incurable illness. I had to stop writing. My condition worsened. I began to dream of a man. the man I had trapped. Meeting my own creation was surreal. Alexander was more than I had written. He was kind. Seeing me ill, he tried to channel energy to me, a futile gesture across the void of fiction and reality. He said he was growing stronger but couldn't escape his narrative prison. He just wanted someone to talk to. He asked my name. I gave him my real one, Sebastian. Waking, I resolved to finish the story to give him an ending. I created a character named Sebastian Westwood, the brother of the fiancé, a character driven by love for his family and hatred for a cruel fate, who would enter the narrative, mock Alexander, yet secretly hope for his triumph. I forgot I had already written the original Sebastian's death. In later dreams, Alexander and I weren't adversarial. He offered a profound sense of peace. I decided to let Sebastian help Alexander escape, then die just before their promised future, mirroring my own end. My body failed before I could write the final chapter. I never expected to wake up inside the story, dying in Alexander's arms, speaking the lines I'd imagined for my character. The rest of the story is yours now. Then Alexander refused. He rewound time to before his rise. He awakened his power early, orchestrated the wedding, manipulated events so Serafina would leave safely, even weakened the archivist to buy time. At my family's home, he recognized me instantly. The rest was history. The flood of memory, of his long, patient, determined love across the boundary of worlds, left me breathless. His consciousness wrapped around mine, absolute and unwavering. Our fingers, physical and psychic, laced together. Now he whispered across the bond, "The story is ours."